A village of 400 people in the Lot Valley. A stone church that has stood since the 12th century. A weekly market where the same families have sold the same walnuts and the same cheese for 3 generations. Not a single tourist shop, not a single English menu. The average house price, 85,000 euros. This place exists. It is not fictional, not historical, not yet discovered. It is simply one of dozens of villages scattered across the interior of France that the travel industry has not yet found a way to package and sell. While the Dordogne most famous villages fill with British second-home buyers and the Lot's postcard towns attract summer coach parties, there is a deeper France running parallel, quieter, cheaper, and entirely intact. 7 villages, real prices, real communities, and the honest truth about what authentic French rural life actually looks like when nobody is performing it for visitors. Number 7. Belvès, Dordogne. Belvès sits on a hilltop in the Black Périgord, 7 kilometers of winding road from the nearest main route. It has been described, quietly and without fuss, as one of the most complete medieval villages in southwestern France. The description is accurate. 7 bell towers are visible from the central square. The covered market hall dates from the 15th century and still hosts a Saturday market. Beneath the village, troglodyte dwellings carved into the rock were inhabited until the 18th century and remain open to visit. Population: around 1,400. The village has a functioning high street butcher, baker, pharmacy, 2 cafes, which is more than most villages this size retain anywhere in rural Europe. The surrounding countryside is Périgord Noir, deep forest, limestone cliffs, the Nause River Valley running below. Average property price, 120,000 euros. A 3-bedroom stone house in the village recently sold for 145,000 euros. A larger property with land and outbuildings in the surrounding commune sold for 178,000 euros. These figures sit significantly below the more famous Dordogne villages, Sarlat, Les Azes. Bynac, where demand from British and Dutch buyers has pushed prices well above 200,000 euros for comparable properties. The nearest hospital is the Centre Hospitalier de Sarlat, 20 minutes by road with full emergency services. Périgueux, the departmental capital with a larger hospital complex, is 1 hour north. The nearest train station is Ciudad-en-Périgord, 12 kilometers away, with connections to Bordeaux in approximately 2 hours. Honest consideration. Belvès is genuinely rural. A car is not optional. It is the condition of daily life. The village's relative obscurity means the service economy is limited. Specialist medical appointments, larger shopping, and cultural events require driving distances that some find liberating and others find wearing. Winter in the Périgord is quiet in ways that city dwellers sometimes underestimate. The tourist season runs from June to September. Outside those months, the village is returned entirely to its residents. For some, that is precisely the point. Number 6. Estaing, Aveyron. A village so precise in its beauty that it seems designed rather than evolved. The chateau sits directly above the old bridge. The old bridge sits directly above the Lot River. The Lot River runs between limestone banks, so pale they glow in afternoon light. The whole composition, from any angle, looks like a painting that someone forgot to put behind glass. Estaing has around 600 permanent residents and sits on one of the lesser walked sections of the Santiago de Compostela pilgrimage route. Pilgrims pass through in spring and autumn. In summer, French visitors arrive in modest numbers. In winter, the village belongs entirely to the people who live there. It was classified as one of the most beautiful villages of France, Les plus beaux villages de France, a designation that brings some recognition but has not, so far, brought the crowds that follow similar designations elsewhere. Average property price, 95,000 euros. A 2-bedroom village house recently sold for 88,000 euros. A renovated stone property with river views sold for 132,000 euros. The nearest hospital is the Centre Hospitalier de Decazeville, 25 minutes by road. Rodez, the Aveyron's main city with full hospital services, is 40 minutes away. The nearest train station is Viviez de Casville, connecting to Toulouse in approximately 2 hours. Honest consideration. Estang's economy is fragile. The village relies on a small number of businesses, a handful of restaurants, a hotel, craft shops that operate seasonally. Year-round residents describe the off-season as a completely different existence, intimate, self-sufficient, and occasionally isolating depending on temperament. The Aveyron is one of France's least densely populated departments. That emptiness is either the attraction or the obstacle. The question each person must answer honestly before arriving. Number 5. Autioir, Lot. Autioir is the village that Lot residents recommend when asked which village tourists have not yet ruined. The description is slightly uncharitable to other villages in the region, but the underlying point is accurate. Autioir remains genuinely unhurried. The waterfall above the village is 20 minutes on foot. The turreted manor houses that line the central square belong to families who have owned them for generations and show no interest in conversion to Geats. Population: around 350. This is a small community, small enough that arrivals are noticed and, in time, absorbed. The surrounding plateau is Causse limestone open, windswept, grazed by sheep whose milk produces Rochefort cheese 20 kilometers to the south. Average property price? 105,000 euros. A village house with garden recently sold for 98,000 euros. A larger property with views of the surrounding valley sold for 165,000 euros. The nearest town with full services is Saint-Céré, 8 kilometers away. The Centre Hospitalier de Figeac provides hospital services 35 minutes by road. Brive-la-Gaillarde, a larger city with a comprehensive hospital and a direct train to Paris, is 50 kilometers north the train journey to Paris, taking approximately 4 hours 15 minutes. Honest consideration. Autioir's population is declining. The village school closed several years ago. Young families tend to settle in Saint-Céré or Figeac rather than in the village itself, which means the permanent community skews older. New arrivals are welcomed, but integration requires effort and, ideally, functional French. The village does not cater to non-French speakers in any practical sense. This is not a criticism, it is simply the reality of a place that has not organized itself around external visitors. Number 4. Saint-Eulalie-d'Olt, Aveyron. The Lot River runs clean and fast through this village, shallow enough in summer to wade across at certain points. The mill wheel still turns. The Renaissance chateau at the center of the village is privately owned and maintained with visible care. The church contains capitals carved in the 11th century that art historians cite in specialist papers and that most of the world has never seen. Saint-Eulalie-d'Olt has around 350 permanent residents and carries the Les Plus Beaux Villages designation without the visitor numbers that usually follow. It sits in the upper Lot Valley, where the landscape tightens into something more austere. Limestone gorges, walnut groves, villages spaced far enough apart that the spaces between them feel intentional. Average property price? 90,000 euros. A 2-bedroom house in the village recently sold for 82,000 euros. A stone farmhouse with land in the surrounding commune sold for 148,000 euros. The nearest hospital is at Espalion, 15 minutes by road, a small but functional facility. Rodez, 45 minutes away, provides full services including emergency care. The nearest TGV-connected station is Rodez, with services to Paris in approximately 4 hours via Toulouse. Honest consideration. Saint-Eulalie-d'Olt is genuinely remote by the standards of villages on this list. The upper Lot Valley sees hard winters cold, occasionally snowy, and extended. The village's small size means that the social world is, by definition, limited. Residents who thrive here consistently describe an ability to generate their own contentment rather than relying on external entertainment. Those who struggle describe the same quality from the opposite angle. The river is real and the mill wheel turns and the carved capitals in the church are genuinely extraordinary. Whether that is enough depends entirely on who is asking. Number 3. Najac, Aveyron. The Chateau of Najac sits on a narrow, rocky promontory above a loop of the Aveyron River. and the view from its towers available to anyone who climbs the modest entry fee is one of the unremarked great views of southern France. The village descends from the chateau along a single street, a Bastide layout unchanged since the 13th century, with stone arcades sheltering the pavement on both sides. Population: around 750. Najac has a weekly market, a functioning school, a medical practice, and several restaurants that operate year-round, a combination of services that makes it more resilient than many villages of comparable size. The surrounding Aveyron gorges attract kayakers and cyclists in summer, but the visitors who come tend toward the independent and unhurried variety rather than the coach tour variety. Average property price: 110,000 euros. A village house recently sold for 105,000 euros. A renovated property with views of the chateau and river sold for 187,000 euros. The Centre Hospitalier de Villefranche-de-Rouergue provides hospital services 20 minutes by road. Rodez is 45 minutes. The nearest train station is Najac itself. The Toulouse to Rodez regional line stops here, with Toulouse reachable in approximately 2 hours. Honest consideration: Najac's train connection is genuinely useful, but the service runs infrequently. For daily life, a car remains essential. The village's single main street means that social life in winter is concentrated and visible. Everyone knows everyone's movements, which is either warmth or scrutiny depending on disposition. The chateau requires ongoing restoration funding, and the surrounding gorge economy is seasonal. What Najac offers that is increasingly rare is this: a village with genuine medieval bones, a working community, a train stop, and house prices that have not yet been inflated by the discovery of its own beauty. Number 2. Bruce-les-Châteaux, Aveyron. A castle, a village, a river, a medieval bridge, and almost nobody here who has come from elsewhere. Bruce-les-Châteaux sits at the confluence of the Dordogne and Rance rivers in southern Aveyron, its chateau rising directly from the rock above a village of around 180 permanent residents. The medieval bridge connecting the two riverbanks is still the only crossing point. The wash house beside the river is intact. The whole settlement reads like a place that history passed through and then, having arranged everything carefully, simply left. Les Plus Beaux Villages classification applies here too, but visitor numbers remain low. The village is far enough from major routes to require deliberate effort to reach, and deliberate effort filters out the casual and the distracted. Average property price: 78,000 euros, the lowest on this list for a classified village. A small stone house recently sold for 72,000 euros. A larger property requiring renovation sold for 95,000 euros. The nearest hospital is at Millau, 40 minutes by road, with full emergency services. Saint-Affrique, 20 minutes away, has a medical center with GP services. The nearest train station is Millau, connecting to Montpellier in approximately 1 hour 30 minutes. Honest consideration: Bruce-les-Châteaux's population is very small and declining. Village services are minimal: a seasonal restaurant, a small mairie, the church. Everything else requires a drive. The road to Millau is good, but the surrounding terrain is deeply rural. Aveyron, which means distances feel longer than they measure. For the right person, someone seeking genuine solitude combined with genuine medieval architecture at prices that seem impossible, Bruce-les-Châteaux is close to, without comparison, anywhere in Western Europe. For the wrong person, it is simply very far from everything. Number 1. Conques, Aveyron. There is a village in the Aveyron Gorge that contains one of the great works of Romanesque architecture in Europe. The Abbey Church of Sainte-Foy at Conques has stood since the 11th century. The tympanum above the west door depicting the Last Judgment in carved stone has been studied by art historians for 900 years and continues to produce new scholarship. The stained glass windows were designed by the artist Pierre Solages and installed in 1994, abstract, amber-toned, and in conversation with the 11th century stone in ways that should not work and entirely do. Conques has around 300 permanent residents and sits in a gorge of the Dordogne River, accessible by a single road that descends steeply from the plateau above. Santiago pilgrims pass through on the Via Podiensis route. Summer brings visitors in genuine numbers. This is the one village on this list that sees real tourism, but they come for the Abbey, and they come quietly. There are no arcades, no chain restaurants, no souvenir shops selling plastic reproductions of the tympanum. The village has protected its integrity with unusual determination. Average property price, 115,000 euros. A village house recently sold for 108,000 euros. A property with views of the Abbey and Gorge sold for 195,000 euros. The Centre Hospitalier de Decazeville is 30 minutes by road. Rodez, with full hospital services, is 45 minutes. The nearest train station is Viviez-Decazeville, with connections to Toulouse in approximately 2 hours. Honest consideration. Conques is steep. The village descends the gorge on foot-worn stone paths, and a car is useful for access but cannot navigate most of the interior. Mobility limitations are a genuine practical concern. Winter here is austere. The gorge holds cold air, and the light arrives late and leaves early between November and February. The permanent community is small and, by all accounts, protective of what the village is. New arrivals are welcomed in proportion to their willingness to understand what they are arriving into. The Abbey is not a backdrop, it is the reason the village exists. Anyone who moves to Conques lives, in some sense, in its shadow, and most people who have done so describe that as an arrangement they find, over time, to be a privilege. Final. 7 villages, 1 department producing 4 of them. A France that the travel industry has not yet successfully packaged. The Dordogne, the Lot, the Aveyron, these are not unknown regions. They appear in guidebooks and on property websites. But the villages on this list exist in the gaps between the famous and the discovered. In the part of the map where the roads narrow and the signage becomes infrequent, and the weekly market is attended by people who live there rather than people who drove from somewhere else to photograph it. Prices from 72,000 euros to 195,000 euros, communities ranging from 180 to 1,400 residents. A common quality running through all of them: the sense that daily life here has not been arranged for the benefit of people watching from outside. That quality is becoming rare. It will not remain available indefinitely. Your move.